Hey everyone, my name is WyrmsEye and I finally welcome you back to another episode of the Battlespot Factory, our VGC Battlespot series. It has been too long, guys, a good couple of weeks now since our last episode where we were running a Koko Raichu with Hariyama, Nihiligo, Bulu and all sorts of things. Obviously, I did mention what had gone on over those intervening weeks in a update video that came out last week. If you haven't checked that out, do watch it because it does also give a few details as to what we're going to be doing on the channel in the coming months and years, hopefully, if we sustain that long. But today we're obviously going to be jumping back onto the Battlespot ladder. We are going to be using a new team, and you may be familiar with the one that is on the screen. Metagross, Torkoal, Mimikyu, Hariyama, Tapu Koko and Snorlax. So if you're perceptive, you'll have realised that it is the adapted version of my Birmingham Regionals team, my MimiLax Brum's son, as I called it over the weekend. I took it to a 4-3 record over the Swiss rounds, so pretty decent record overall. Not entirely what I was hoping for, but then again, it was a little bit of fun. It was very simple to pilot, and obviously not chasing an invite. I didn't really want to put too much pressure on myself. There were other factors, of course, that meant that I was taking the weekend a lot less seriously. Those of you who were there will obviously have realised that by the lovely attire that I was in. If you haven't seen any pictures, do check out my Twitter. You'll find them eventually. It's pretty hard to miss. But yes, so I've made the adjustments to the team that I was planning to do. So as you can see, the Tapu Lele has been replaced for Tapu Koko. The Hariyama has now got the Poison Jab instead of the Heavy Slam, and Torkoal's training has been slightly altered to give it some more special defensive bulk, as well as take out the HP investment as a countermeasure. So hopefully, with the changes that we made to the team on this particular occasion, we should be able to do some decent damage with the team. I have laddered with this slightly off camera on a separate cart. Some of the changes weren't actually in action up to that point, but as it stood, the spare cart is currently sitting just under the 1680s, so it's doing pretty well. I am going to be making a further push with it to go on to the 1700s and try and break into the top 10 of the UK rankings on Battlespot, so fingers crossed. But we'll also be making a push with this with the team on this cartridge. I think we're currently starting somewhere in the middle of the 1610s, 1620s, if my memory serves me correctly. 1616 there. So we got some good opportunities with this team, and obviously I'm going to be trying to use it as best as possible. Hopefully the games are going to be pretty quick and pretty fast paced. This team either tends to win very quickly or lose very quickly, and obviously I do hope to run into a couple of the matchups that I did have trouble with, as I said before. Smeargle and Lele is the one that I really want to get straight off the bat if I can. But we do find a Japanese opponent rating us 1685, so slightly higher than what we are at the moment, with a team of Celesteela, Garchomp, Tapu Fini, Togedemaru, Goodra and the Alola Muck. So Togedemaru is obviously going to have the Lightning Rod ability, so Tapu Koko is not necessarily going to benefit too much from being on the field at this time, but there are quite a few other aspects to this that do pose some threat. Excuse me, I still got this unfortunate cold, so I am slightly struggling to get through. You probably can hear it. I still do want to go with some sort of Trick Room mode because I think it will be useful, but it's a case of, do I want Koko to deal with the Garchomp, or do I want I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to lead with Mimikyu and Hariyama. And in the back I am going to take Torkoal and Snorlax. So, a very standard lead for this team. The Hariyama is much more of a supportive Pokemon, so given that what my opponent could lead is most likely going to resist Metagross's Explosion, to a certain extent it's the Togedemaru that I'm most interested in, as we do see that the Togedemaru leads with the Tapu Fini. We've got some avenues to play around with here, and we can get a quite quick Trick Room set up. Unfortunately, the misty terrain is going to mean that it's going to block any Guts boost that we're going to be able to get for the Hariyama, but not necessarily the worst case scenario that we could be in here. Getting rid of the Tapu Fini is going to be important though, so if we can focus that down, that would be a bonus. I think here what I'm going to just do is going to Trick Room straight away, and I am going to Fake Out into that Tapu Fini slot. We do just see the Fake Out onto the Hariyama, so most likely a double target, but in fact the Tapu Fini goes for a Muddy Water and we get a double avoid, so our opponent getting very unlucky to start with, and that does give our Hariyama a lot of avenues to work with now. So we could either choose to close combat into the Togedemaru, or we could go for the Poison Jab into the Tapu Fini. I think either is a potentially good option. It's just a case of what this Togedemaru could do, and I'm just concerned that it's got Spiky Shield. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Rough into the Tapu Fini, and I am just going to Poison Jab it as well. We could see a Protect from that slot. I'm hoping not, but we do see the Spiky Shield from the Togedemaru. So we have called that correctly. Poison Jab off onto Fini, should be doing decent damage, not a heck of a lot realistically, but it is enough to get it within some decent range, and we do see that Tapu Fini continues with Muddy Water, so the fact that it's not chosen to go for a Moonblast or even a Dazzling Gleam really makes me think that it is Choice Specs, so kind of a very interesting choice from our opponent here. And I think this turn we can choose to go for another Play Rough into the Tapu Fini, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to switch up and go for a close combat onto the Togedemaru. So we actually see the Fini Protect there, so not Choice Specs, just choosing to use Muddy Water over the more conventional route of Moonblasting the Hariyama. But we will take that, because that does give us opportunities now to, going forward into the next couple of turns, we can sort of play around this. And the Fini is under a lot of pressure. Okay, and as we see the Muck come in as well. I'm just slightly concerned that we could see a Celesteela switch in on the Tapu Fini. We haven't also seen any item on the Fini, which makes me suspicious now that, given that we know that it's not a Choice Specs, it could be a 50% berry. So what I'm just going to do is I am going to just Poison Jab into the Fini. I am going to take the risk that there may be a Celesteela switch in. No switches though, so we should be able to knock out this Tapu Fini. Nicely done. The Muck is going to go for a Poison Jab back into our Hariyama. Still not picking up the knockout though, which is very nice for us, as the Play Rough does just under 50%. As we see Gudra as the last. How many turns of Trick Room? 1 turn of Trick Room. Okay, I think we can get up another Trick Room next turn if we're lucky. If we can apply enough pressure here. So what I'm going to do is play rough into the Gudra. And I am just going to close combat into the Muck, I think. No sense being too risky here, as we just see that our opponent forfeits there. So slightly premature, I think. There are avenues that he could have got back into the game. If he protected Muck this turn and decided to remove Hariyama with the Gudra, that turn it could have led to a potential issue with my Snorlax having to come in, potentially belly drumming in front of a knockoff from the Muck, which wouldn't have been ideal. So there were problems to iron out, but we weren't necessarily... We were certainly in control of that match, and I think we could have closed it out quite convincingly. It just depended how our opponent was to go on from there, whether he chose to protect any of his Pokemon on the last turn of Trick Room. I would have imagined that the Muck would have been a very clever protect there, very safe protect as well. But the potential that the Mimikyu could have got another Trick Room up was going to be particularly difficult for him to deal with, so probably very understandable there. And as I said, this team can win battles very quickly, but it can also lose them very quickly in the same measure if it comes up against a team that it doesn't like. But we will continue on, so we are still climbing the ladder. Sorry guys. 16:35 now, and yeah, this team is very orchestrated, very telegraphed in how it plays out. It wants to get up Trick Room straight away. It's basically designed to work around Mimikyu, Snorlax, Metagross and Torkoal the most, as we find another Japanese opponent with a rating of 1660. A team of Garchomp, Tapu Koko, Arcanine, Snorlax, Celesteela and the Alolan Ninetales. So what do we want to consider here? So straight away I'm kind of leaning towards Metagross in order to go and use Explosion, but I don't necessarily think it's the correct move here because of the Garchomp mostly. Because my feeling is the Garchomp is the Tectonic Rage variant, just judging by the team. It won't probably be Scarfed. It's the Celesteela is the only flying type on the team to mean that Scarf Earthquakes could work, so I'm a bit dubious about that. I think here what I'll lead is Mimikyu, Hariyama, and once again in the back I'm going to go Snorlax and Torkoal. So there is going to be a bit of a weather war with the Ninetales and the Torkoal, so we will have to play somewhat smartly around stopping the Ninetales from getting the hail up straight away. Oh, excuse me. But it all depends how he leads, and Tapu Koko Arcanine, pretty favourable lead actually, all things considered. But we do have to consider the potential for the Arcanine to know Raw at this stage. And that to me is the biggest threat here. I'm less concerned about the Tapu Koko here than I am with the Arcanine. Because normally I would fake out a Tapu Koko if it was anything else with it on the field, but Arcanine makes me believe that it could have Raw. So I'm going to Trick Room here. I am going to use Fake Out onto the Arcanine. The Tapu Koko can use Dazzling Gleam. I don't think that picks up the knockout onto the Hariyama unless it's carrying VRMZ, which is altogether very likely. And as we see, Hariyama survives that pretty well. And we will get our Trick Room. So we do get the Flame Orb up. And I think here what I am just going to do is I am going to Shadow Claw into the Arcanine, and I am going to go for the Poison Jab into the Tapu Koko. I can imagine the Koko may protect, but I think it's a risk worth taking. The Arcanine will only ever go for Flare Blitz onto the Hariyama, I believe, in this case. If not, it's a misstep because it just gives me an avenue to work with in the following turn. So we actually see the Arcanine withdraw in favour of the Snorlax, but we do get the Poison Jab off into the Koko, taking that ridiculously well actually, all things considered, and we do see a Volt Switch onto our Mimikyu slots. And is this Arcanine coming back in? Yeah, Arcanine coming back in. So the two Intimidates from the Arcanine is mitigating our Guts boost from the Flame Orb. And likewise, the Mimikyu is still relatively free to go for a Shadow Claw here. We will have to be careful in future turns. I just got this nagging suspicion that it's going to... Does it belly drum? Yes, it belly drums. We'll close combat into the Snorlax here, I think. As we see Arcanine switch out, probably back into Celesteela. Interesting choice. Interesting. As the Snorlax goes for Curse there, so... Close combat isn't going to be doing too much to this Snorlax. Enough to get it under half, so we will proc its berry. Now our opponent is playing very well around our Trick Room turns here. How many Trick Room turns do we actually have left? 2. Okay. I'm going to switch Torkoal into the Mimikyu slots. And I am just going to continue to close combat the Snorlax here. If I can get Mimikyu to Trick Room at a later stage, that would be ideal, but I'm hoping that the Torkoal is going to put enough pressure onto both these Pokemon on the field to allow us to do some decent damage, but we do just see a return into the Harry armor slot. The Celesteela is probably going to heavy slam into the Torkoal. Respectable damage, but not too much. I think we go into Snorlax here. And if my memory serves me correctly, a cursed Snorlax is still faster. It's still slower under Trick Room than a Torkoal, so I should be okay to go for an Eruption play. And I should be able to get a free Belly Drum as well. We shall see, of course. We won't be doing as much damage to the Snorlax as I would like, unfortunately, with the Eruption, but we should be getting enough that it's going to be threatened in the following turn. And with the Snorlax of ours being adamant, we know that we will outspeed it under the next Trick Room. Once we come out of Trick Room, sorry. Celesteela is obviously going to be a problem. It does protect here, understandably so. Snorlax is actually still faster. And this is going to be a very useless Eruption as well. So maybe Heat Wave was a better option. But we do get our Belly Drum up, so small window of opportunity here. So I am just going to switch back into the Mimikyu. And I am going to Facade into the Snorlax here. So my opponent played the Trick Room turns extremely well here, which I think is going to put them in good stead. We have got Mimikyu back onto the field for free though, which is nice. So the Facade will do a lot of damage onto this Snorlax. Not picking up the knockout though, which is surprising to me. It is cursed. Ooh, that does so much damage. Yeah, we've lost this. Celesteela heavy slams into Mimikyu. That picks up the knockout. Snorlax can Facade into theirs, picks up that knockout, but yeah, it's doing too much damage here. But I've got to try and go for a Trick Room here. I have to Facade the Snorlax to stop it from knocking us out. Yeah, that's understandable. So Heavy Slam into the Mimikyu will pick up the knockout here. We'll give it a Beast Boost as well, probably in Defense or Special Defense. Special Defense, yeah. And we do see the Facade here. It will knock out the Snorlax, but the game is already won for my opponent here. They played the Trick Room turns out brilliantly, so I can't really fault them. Maybe we should have brought one of our other Trick Room options earlier onto the battlefield to put more pressure on. Especially once we saw the curse, I think. Yeah, so it doesn't really matter what my opponent brings in. I would imagine it's the Tapu Koko and it's just going to Dazzling Gleam. Chooses to go Arcanine route, which is, yeah, a fair enough choice. But the Arcanine can go for Flare Blitz, Celesteela, Heavy Slam. Yeah, the game is won here. So, good game to my opponent there. She played amazingly well. well managed on my own trick room turns. We didn't really put up that much of a fight, which is really unfortunate for us. But yeah, I think not taking full advantage of the trick room turns there for us was a big problem. And she cycled Intimidate, she cycled her Pokemon extremely well. And as I say, if you're able to manage your Pokemon advantages very well, this team can be stopped pretty easily. If once Trick Room expires, you still have a decent number of Pokemon that can actually play through the remainder of the team. So I can't really fault that. It was a good game, so fair play to them. And I think 26 minutes, I think we'll call it there. So thank you guys for joining me today, and welcome back. Obviously we're going to be trying to get back onto the grind and make these as regular as possible. There will at least be 2 Battle Spot Factory videos every week, potentially up to as many as 3. Definitely Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then a extra one that could be slipped in at some point during the week, depending on circumstances. But until next time guys, I hope you've enjoyed watching, and goodbye for now.